Hello, Eric Gibaud, ericgibaud.com, and today I'm going to speak about what camera to start with. Let's start. Very often I receive emails and questions on my Facebook or YouTube channel, and the question is always, I want to buy my first camera. I always use my smartphone, but I want to buy a camera. What should I buy? So you have three main questions you must ask yourself. First, what do you want to do with this camera? Family pictures, traveling, portrait, night photography, concert, street photography. What kind of pictures you want to make mainly? Second, you must think about your budget. Think about a budget you will feel comfortable with. Some people, they really stay short of what they could actually pay, and they get something that is really basic and they could have gotten something a bit better. And some people, they just spend too much and after they're in trouble. So try to feel something that will be okay for you. And third question, you're the only person that can answer, is when I see this camera, I think that could be okay with me. What do I feel? Which one do I like most? I like the way it looks. I like the weight. I like the volume. I like everything. This one, and then see if it matches actually your needs. But this is one question you can only answer yourself. No one can answer for you. So basically there are four families of cameras: compact camera, bridge cameras, DSLR cameras, mirrorless cameras. So we're going to start with compact cameras. As its name is, compact camera, it is a compact size and compact volume and compact weight, little weight. So it is a camera that you will likely use the same as you use your smartphone, hoping you get a better result, basically. But the size, to have it in your pocket, anywhere you are, get it out and make a picture. So the big advantage of compact camera is the size and weight. And the disadvantage, why? Because of the size, the lens is limited in two ways. The zoom lens is limited. You will not be able to get that far. Why? Because you would need a really longer lens. So normally they have a zoom that is like 3 or 5 times. What does that mean, 5 times? Well, if you start from 10 millimeter, 5 times will get you from 10 to 50. If you start at 100 millimeters, it will go from 100 to 500. So it doesn't mean much, but don't worry. Makers normally they give a range of zoom that is usable and logical. On a compact camera, usually it goes from landscape up to portrait, a bit more. So this is about the idea, okay, on a compact camera. And also the fact that the camera is small makes the lens smaller and is less luminous. So very often compact camera, they're not as good in low light. You don't get exactly all the light you would like, and also the autofocus is smaller because you don't get enough light to actually move it properly. This may be a problem. And the sensor size is really similar to your telephone. There are some exceptions. There are some compact camera with larger sensor, but we're speaking about entry level, about starting with your first camera. So this means that in low light the quality won't be that brilliant. But if you're going to use it daytime, traveling, normal use, probably compact is a good option because the image quality will be fine for you. It's only if you get into a critical situation that the quality won't be there, probably. Bridge cameras. Well, a bridge, they make the bridge between compact and reflex and mirrorless. So the bridge camera, they have the halfway between compact and reflex cameras. So they take a bit of advantage of both and they keep the disadvantage of some of both also. So the advantage, well, the advantage is normally they're not too big. There are some exceptions like the Nikon P1000, which is massive. I'll put you a link of my review I made. Normally they are smaller than DSLR or mirrorless. Some are similar to mirrorless, but normally smaller than DSLR. And the advantage compared to the compact camera is that the zoom lens is a lot longer. So normally you get like 20, 50 times, 83 in the case. I think it's 83 in the case of this P1000 I said about Nikon. But it means that you will be able to get a lot further. The same as the compact camera, the problem with zoom lens on bridge, very often they're not very luminous. There are some exceptions, like for example the Lumix FZ300. I'll leave you a review here, and it's 2.8 on the full range, but this is not usual. Very often they're a lot less luminous, and that will give you maybe some problem in low light. Sensors have similar sensors to the compact cameras, so expect similar image quality. There are exceptions. There are some top of the range bridge camera that are more luminous, have better sensor, better many things, but we're speaking about entry level or mid-range cameras, so normally expect quality to be similar to compact. Also, one thing is you see a bridge and you see this big lens and you feel like, oh, I can do everything. Well, not necessarily. Depends on the bridge you're buying, because as you cannot change the lens, it means that if you want to do something that really specialized, like ultra wide angle or macro, you cannot change the lens. So if your bridge doesn't have a super wide lens, you cannot do it. And if you don't have macro possibility on it, some do, some don't, then you cannot do macro either. There are some extra lens you can actually mount on the front main lens, and that helps you to make some kind of macro, some wider lens, but this is still something that is added on the front of the lens, same as you could add a lens on your telephone basically. So think this is a limitation depending on what you're going to do. So now let's go to mirrorless. Mirrorless cameras, they're basically like a reflex camera, but they took out the mirror. This means the volume and size is smaller. The weight is also less than a reflex camera. And what they're going to use will be similar. The sensors are the same. They can be APS-C, micro four thirds, or full frame. And well, there are some mirrorless medium format also, but we speak about entry level. Okay, your first camera. let's be humble and start with something payable and something usable. Okay, so the sensor, they will be the same as on reflex cameras. The optics, the lenses will be similar, so they will be thought for mirrorless, but they will be similar. Some actually compatible with an adapter, so very similar. The thing is, with a mirrorless, as there is no mirror, normally on a reflex, what you see comes onto the mirror and is reflected on the mirror, and you see it through a viewfinder, which is optical. On the mirrorless, there's no mirror, so nothing to reflect. So what you see in the viewfinder is actually what the sensor is seeing. So actually, your viewfinder is not optical, it's electronic. This is like a mini screen, and you actually look through this mini LCD screen. So depending on the level and the quality of the camera, mirrorless camera you choose, some viewers are not really comfortable because you actually see some small dot, and you do see it's like a screen, and some people don't like it. One of the advantage of a mirrorless viewfinder is that when there is really low light, when a reflex camera would not let you see anything because there is not enough light to get in to sit in the viewfinder, you cannot actually frame properly. With a mirrorless you can, because they just amplify the signal and you actually see on the screen as if it was night vision. So this is a good point. The image quality is very similar, or it's exactly the same as a reflex camera. So if there is maybe some noise or not noise, or sharp or less sharp or whatever, this is exactly the same thing, because actually you use the same optics and you actually use the same sensors, so you get exactly the same result. Obviously you have to compare the same range, because if you take a top of the range reflex compared to an entry level mirrorless, you'll think the reflex is better, and vice versa. So obviously you must compare, that can be actually compared. Maybe the darkest side of mirrorless is actually, as there is no mirror, the autofocus is not made using the mirror, it's done directly on the sensor. So it means autofocus is normally slower and doesn't work as well as a reflex camera. But what I say is true for cameras maybe like 6 months old or a year old or older, because when I see the latest thing they've made with Fujifilm and also Sony with mirrorless, you see the latest, the autofocus is brilliant. But actually I'm speaking about entry level or mid level, so probably you will see that if you want to do some sport photography, action photography, the autofocus will be maybe a bit slow for you. One thing it's great in mirrorless is, as what you see is actually what the sensor is saying. You have real-time information, so this is great for the exposure. You actually can decide because you have all the information in real time. What you see is what actually your sensor is saying. This does not happen on a reflex, so this is a really good advantage. One of the problems is that the sensor is always active. This means that you have the sensor is active and actually one screen, whether the viewfinder or whether the screen is active, so it means the battery life is a lot shorter. And I think it's no problem, because I think you should not decide whether mirrorless or DSLR just because of the battery. It's better to buy an extra battery if you prefer the features of a mirrorless than to say, no, just for the battery I go for reflex. No, look at other things like the lenses that are available with this brand, or the features of this camera. They are far more important than just the battery life. So let's speak about DSLR. DSLR, they are what we know from ever, and except that with the D it's digital, so it's the same as the SLR, but instead of a film you have a digital sensor, which means DSLR. So basically they have a mirror in there. Normally the size is larger than mirrorless. This is something must take into account, not always, but it's larger. The weight normally is more important. The image quality is exactly the same as mirrorless. If you want to buy an entry-level camera and you dart into mirrorless and DSLR, you're likely to prefer DSLR if you're going to do action photography, because on entry-level, autofocus is generally faster on a DSLR. You have an optical viewfinder, which means that what you see is actually the actual scene reflected on the mirror, which is a big advantage if you work in daytime and you want to see exactly how it is and you don't want to see small dot of a screen. Although top of the range mirrorless don't have this problem, but entry level normally you see it's a screen, and so some people prefer this. But when it comes to nighttime, the problem is that with low light you'll get little light in the lens, little light on the mirror, little light on your in your viewfinder, so you won't be able to actually frame very often. Or if you use ND filter really dark, like 10 stops, then you won't see anything in the viewfinder, so that may be a problem. Battery life is a lot longer, but as I said before, I don't think it's a matter of choice. You should not choose one or either just because of the battery life. The body and weight is bigger, so this is an advantage for some people, disadvantage for others. I've used both full frame in DSLR and also mirrorless. I prefer my Olympus, which is a lot smaller. Obviously I speak about micro four thirds, but if you look at a Sony mirrorless, that's smaller. I prefer small size, but some people use heavy lenses because they do wildlife. They prefer to have a big camera body because they can hold it better. They feel it's more compensated, the weight is more balanced. So actually it's matter of taste. I cannot tell you one is better, the other is wrong, or the other way around. So it all depends on you and the way you feel it actually. I think in every case you should go to a shop, a store, whatever, and have everything in your hand and feel how it is. Feel what you like, the weight, how it's balanced, the way it feels, the way it looks. I think it's important because you will be able to make the right decision this way regarding the way it feels. Maybe not the features, but at least that part you must have them in your hand. Or go to a meeting with more photographers and you actually feel the cameras, and it helps you a bit decide. So I would say there are two big families. The general purpose cameras, I would say, which is compact and bridge cameras, and the specialized cameras, that would be the mirrorless and the DSLR. For example, if you want to do a macro, really a wide angle or something really specialized, you prefer a mirrorless or DSLR because you will put the lens you really need for that job. Some people say, yeah, but on mirrorless and DSLR, you can also put a lens that be used for everything, like on 18 to 200 millimeters. Yes, but I think if you're thinking of putting this on a mirrorless or DSLR, this is a big mistake. Why? Because these all-purpose lenses, they have normally lousy optical quality, and some bridge cameras, they have a better optical quality than these all-purpose lenses. So if you're going to think just about that, I would prefer to go for a bridge. It's true that if you want to do only low light photography and then you say I want to put my ISO really high or whatever, then yes, it's true that mirrorless or DSLR would be maybe preferred. But if you look at the lens matter, if you want to do an all-purpose lens, go for a bridge. So still you need to decide on the format. Full frame, APS-C, micro four thirds. This is another story, this is another video, but actually I would say, as we're speaking about your first camera, I would remove of the list what is full frame. Why? Because it's more expensive, it's bigger, you actually probably don't need it ever, but at least not starting. And you don't even know yet if you're going to like to use a camera on a daily basis or very often. So I would look at, if you're in mirrorless, APS-C or micro four thirds, and if you look at DSLR, I would look at APS-C. What is best? Micro four thirds, APS-C? Well, it depends on you, it depends on what you read, what people tell you. Don't forget, be careful with what your friends are telling. I'll leave you a video about that. But first, think about the four family and the main three questions, and depends on what you want to do, you will be able to decide a bit better whether APS-C or whether micro four thirds for your first camera. I hope this video has interested you. If you feel it may interest more people, please share it on social networks. If you have not done yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's a small button down here and also a small bell. If you click on it, you'll get notified when I upload a new video. My website, ericgibaud.com. If you have any question, you can leave a comment below or send me an email to info@ericgibaud.com. And below I also put links of my gear on Amazon and also links to other parts of my YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Bye.